Every time you react emotionally to something, you give away your power. The Stoics figured out how to stop being controlled by reactions and start ruling yourself instead. You're being controlled right now, not by some conspiracy or external force, but by your own reactions. Someone says something and you get angry. Something doesn't go your way and you get frustrated. You see something online and you get anxious. You're reacting constantly to everything around you, and those reactions are controlling your mood, your decisions, and your entire life. The Stoics understood that the difference between weak people and strong people isn't what happens to them. It's whether they react or respond, and learning to stop reacting is how you start ruling yourself. Before we break this down, if you recognize that you react too much, or if you want to learn how to stay in control, drop a comment. Hit that like button if you're ready to stop being reactive, and subscribe because this is going to change how you operate in the world. So, what's the difference between reacting and responding? A reaction is automatic. Something triggers you and you immediately act on that trigger without thinking. Someone insults you and you lash out. Traffic makes you late and you get angry. Something doesn't work and you get frustrated. You're on autopilot, just responding to stimuli like a machine. You're not in control. The external event is in control. A response is deliberate. Something happens, you notice it, you think about it, and then you choose how to act. There's space between the trigger and your action. That space is where your power lives. Epictetus taught that between stimulus and response there's a gap, and in that gap is your freedom to choose. But most people skip right over that gap. They go straight from trigger to reaction, and they wonder why they feel out of control. Here's the problem. When you're reactive, you're giving your power to everything around you. Your mood depends on whether traffic is good. Your peace depends on whether people treat you well. Your confidence depends on whether things go smoothly. You're not ruling yourself. You're being ruled by circumstances, by other people, by random events. You're a puppet, and the world is pulling your strings. Let me show you exactly how reactions destroy your power. First, reactions are impulsive and usually wrong. When you react emotionally, you're not thinking clearly. You say things you regret. You make decisions you'll have to fix later. You act in ways that make situations worse instead of better. Then you have to deal with the consequences of your reaction on top of the original problem. Marcus Aurelius dealt with betrayals and challenges constantly as emperor. If he'd reacted emotionally every time someone opposed him or something went wrong, he would have made terrible decisions that hurt Rome. Instead, he practiced creating space before acting. When something happened that could trigger him, he'd pause. He'd examine the situation rationally. He'd consider his options. Then he'd choose a response based on wisdom, not emotion. This is what ruling yourself looks like. You don't let emotions make your decisions. You feel the emotion, you acknowledge it, but you don't act on it immediately. You create space to think, to evaluate, to choose deliberately. This takes practice because your brain wants to react quickly. That's how it's wired for survival. But most modern triggers aren't survival situations. They're just inconveniences and challenges that require thoughtful responses, not reactive ones. Second way reactions destroy your power is they're predictable. When you're reactive, people can manipulate you easily. They know exactly what buttons to push to get the response they want from you. Someone knows you'll get defensive if they criticize you. Someone knows you'll feel guilty if they use a certain tone. Someone knows you'll get angry if they do a specific thing. They're playing you like an instrument because your reactions are consistent and automatic. The Stoics were obsessed with being unpredictable through self-control. Seneca wrote about not letting others know what disturbs you because once they know, they have power over you. When you stop being reactive, you become harder to manipulate. People can't push your buttons if you don't have buttons to push. They can't control you with guilt or anger or fear if you're responding thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally. Start noticing your patterns. What consistently triggers you? What do you always react to in the same way? Those are your vulnerabilities. Those are the places where you're giving away control. Once you identify them, you can work on creating space in those specific situations. When that trigger comes up, instead of your automatic reaction, pause, choose differently, break the pattern. Third problem with reactions is they keep you stuck in the same cycles. You react to stress by eating badly. You react to conflict by avoiding it. You react to criticism by getting defensive. You react to uncertainty by procrastinating. These reactive patterns keep you trapped because you never actually solve the underlying issues. You just react the same way over and over, getting the same results over and over. Epictetus taught that if you want different outcomes, you need different actions. But different actions require you to stop reacting automatically and start responding deliberately. You can't change your patterns while you're operating on autopilot. You need to interrupt the reaction, create space, and choose a different response. This is how you break cycles and actually grow. Here's how to practice this. Pick one reactive pattern you want to change. Maybe you react to stress by scrolling for hours. Next time you feel stressed, catch yourself before you reach for your phone. Notice the urge, acknowledge it. Then choose something different. Go for a walk, do some push-ups, journal, anything that's a deliberate choice instead of an automatic reaction. Do this enough times and you rewire the pattern. Fourth way, reactions steal your power is they make you exhausting to be around. Reactive people are unpredictable in a bad way. You never know what mood they'll be in because it depends on what just happened to them. They're calm one moment and exploding the next. They're fine until some small thing triggers them. Being around reactive people is draining because you have to walk on eggshells and manage their emotions for them. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by people constantly, and he made a conscious effort not to burden them with his reactions. He felt frustration, anger, disappointment, all the normal human emotions, but he didn't dump those reactions on everyone around him. He processed them internally, responded to situations thoughtfully, and maintained composure even when things were difficult. This made him someone people wanted to be around and follow. When you stop being reactive, you become more pleasant and trustworthy. People know you won't explode over small things. They know you can handle bad news calmly. They know you make decisions based on reason, not emotion. This makes you someone others want to work with, be in relationships with, and rely on. Your non-reactivity becomes a strength that attracts opportunities and people. Fifth problem with reactions is they prevent you from seeing clearly. When you're reacting emotionally, you can't think straight. Your perception is distorted by anger or fear or anxiety. You see threats that aren't there. You miss solutions that are obvious. You make everything bigger and worse than it actually is. Your reactive state creates a filter that distorts reality. Seneca wrote about how we need to observe things as they actually are, not as they appear through our emotional reactions. A calm mind sees clearly. A reactive mind sees through the distortion of emotion. When you learn to respond instead of react, you maintain clarity even in difficult situations. You see problems accurately, which means you can solve them effectively. Practice this by asking yourself one question when something triggers you. What's actually happening here, separate from how I feel about it? Strip away the emotional interpretation and look at the facts. Usually, the facts are less dramatic than your reaction. Someone was rude, but that's just their behavior, not an attack on your worth. Something went wrong, but that's just a problem to solve, not a catastrophe. When you separate facts from feelings, you regain clarity. Sixth way reactions destroy your power is they're exhausting. Every time you react emotionally, you burn energy. You get angry and your body floods with stress hormones. You get anxious and your system goes into fight or flight. You react to every little thing throughout the day, and by evening you're depleted. You wonder why you're so tired when you didn't do anything physically demanding. It's because reacting is energetically expensive. The Stoics conserved energy by responding calmly instead of reacting emotionally. Marcus Aurelius had to deal with constant challenges, but he didn't waste energy on emotional reactions to each one. He stayed centered, handled what needed handling, and moved on. This allowed him to maintain his effectiveness even under enormous pressure. Meanwhile, reactive people burn out because they're constantly flooding themselves with stress responses. When you stop reacting, you conserve massive amounts of energy. You're not getting wound up over small things. You're not carrying stress from one situation into the next. You handle things calmly and efficiently, which takes far less energy than emotional reactions do. This energy conservation means you have more capacity for what actually matters. Here's what the Stoics really understood about ruling yourself. You can't rule your life if you can't rule your reactions. Every time you react automatically to a trigger, you're demonstrating that external events control you. You're showing that you're not the one in charge. Your emotions are in charge. Circumstances are in charge. Other people are in charge, but you're not. Ruling yourself means you control your responses regardless of what happens externally. Someone is rude and you choose calmness. Something goes wrong and you choose thoughtful problem solving. You face disappointment and you choose acceptance and adaptation. You're not at the mercy of events. You're the ruler of your own mind and behavior. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you find strength. This is the core of ruling yourself. Outside events will happen. They're beyond your control, but your response is always within your control. Always. Even when it feels like you have no choice but to react, you do have a choice. You can pause. You can create space. You can choose deliberately. The difference between people who rule themselves and people who are ruled by circumstances is this pause. Weak people skip it. Strong people use it. Something happens, and before they act, they create space. They observe their emotional reaction without being controlled by it. They think about their options. They choose based on their principles and their long-term interests, not based on their immediate emotional state. Stop reacting to everything. Start creating space between what happens and how you respond. This one shift will transform your entire life because you'll move from being controlled by circumstances to being in control of yourself. You'll stop making impulsive decisions you regret. You'll stop being manipulated by people who know your triggers. You'll stop exhausting yourself with constant emotional reactions. Here's how to start right now. The next time something triggers you, catch yourself before you react. Notice the urge to respond immediately. Feel the emotion rising, but don't act on it yet. Pause for just 10 seconds. In those 10 seconds, ask yourself what a thoughtful response would be instead of a reactive one. Then choose that response deliberately. Do this consistently, and you'll rewire your brain. The gap between stimulus and response will get longer. The space where your power lives will expand. You'll find yourself naturally pausing before reacting, naturally considering your options, naturally choosing deliberate responses over automatic reactions. This is what ruling yourself looks like in practice. The Stoics practiced this every single day. It wasn't easy for them either. They had the same impulses to react that you do. The difference is they trained themselves to create space and choose their responses. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that he'd face things that would trigger him, and he prepared himself to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. You can do the same thing. Start your day by acknowledging that something will probably trigger you today. Someone will be difficult, something will go wrong. You'll face frustration or disappointment or stress. Prepare yourself now to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally. When the trigger comes, you'll be ready. You'll pause. You'll choose. You'll rule yourself. This is real power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. When you rule your own reactions, when you choose your responses deliberately, when you maintain your center regardless of what's happening around you, you become unshakable.